Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Life After JILA seminar. We're very excited to have Tanya Ramond here with us today. This seminar series is organized by graduate students, and if anyone is interested in volunteering, we are looking for more students to help out, so come talk to me at the end. After the talk, we'll be having refreshments in the H bar, which is in the X wing of JILA on the 3rd floor, and you can just follow the crowd. So if you didn't get to ask all the questions that you wanted to and you want to get to know Tanya better, then please come along to that. Tanya graduated with her PhD here working for Carl Leinberger. And then she went on to do a NIST postdoc in quantum optics in the time and frequency division. And then she transitioned to working in the aerospace industry where she did systems engineering. And then she went to do an MBA at the University of Denver, which got her into the more entrepreneurial side. And she had several different leadership positions within startup companies. She's now the president of Sapienne Consulting and also a board member of the Colorado Photonics Industry Association. She's also traveled to Finland as part of the Colorado Quantum delegation. So she's done a lot of amazing things, which we're excited to hear about. So please give her a warm welcome.
Can you hear me? Is it? Okay. All right. So thank you so much for that great introduction. Thank you for having me here. It's really wild to be back here after too long of a time. A lot has changed. I was just saying, since I've been here, it's been a long time, but really glad to be back here and seeing all of you and remembering what it's like to be a grad student, and really wanting to hear other perspectives, other guidance on, well, what am I going to do with my life? So hopefully I can offer some of that. My talk is called, I've titled my talk, Customer Transfer Matrices. And you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. And we'll get to that later in the talk. So hopefully that'll keep you interested. So yes, I'm Tanya Ramond. I'm the president of Sapienne Consulting, my own consulting company right now. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. Is it up? It's not doing anything. It did it when he did it. Nope.
Use that.
Yes.
Sorry.
That's all right. Low tech. All right. Oh. Okay. Career part 1, academic foundation, the phase that you guys are all in right now. So I, as you already heard, I got my PhD here in Carl Leinberger's group, right around the corner here. Those labs don't exist anymore, which was very sad to hear. But yeah, so I worked on something called photoelectron spectroscopy of negative ions. So basically zapping really large molecules with a laser to look at their structure, their fundamental structure. So that was very interesting, it was really interesting to probe, to be able to see what's going on inside an atom or molecule. And by the time I got to the end of my PhD, I thought, well, gosh, I'd really like to play with lasers some more. So this is kind of really well thought out career thinking that I had at the time. So I applied for an NRC postdoc, and I was able to go down the street to NIST in the time and frequency division to what was Leo Holberg's lab at the time. I think now it belongs to maybe Chris Oates. I'm not sure. But anyway, I got to play with femtosecond frequency combs. So at the time they were relatively new technology, so it's like a fun and sexy technology to work with. So that was really cool. And then it was a two-year appointment. And at the end of that time, I I was like, well, can I keep going? Can I stay on? And the answer was no, there was no funding to stay on. So I couldn't put off my decision any longer. So I had to choose, do I want to stay in academia or do I want to go to industry? And so if I was going to do another postdoc, I probably would have to relocate at that point. If I was going to try for a professor position, I'd probably have to relocate. I had a significant other at the time who's now my permanent significant other, and he's a teacher. So I'd have to sell what I wanted to do to him. And but in the end, I kind of came clean with myself and was like, yeah, I don't want to do academia. It was just I want to try something else. I want to go into industry. So so that was my choice at that point. And so then I started talking to people and asking around, and I was told that for people like me who have a PhD in physics, hardware-based work, you should go see what's available at Ball Aerospace, because they do a really good job of bringing in people with PhDs. There's a lot of very interesting work that you can do there, interesting projects, and they value that kind of expertise there. So it was a good option to explore. So that was pretty much the only option I explored, and I got a job there. Again, very thorough, career assessment there. But so I was there for almost 10 years, and I mean, I love the time there. It was fabulous. I love the people I worked with. I learned so much. I had roles that included an optical engineer, something called a systems engineer, and I'll go into that a little bit, as well as engineering management. And the subject areas I got to work in are remote sensing, which is, so stop me if you don't know these words, but so remote sensing is basically taking a picture, essentially. Both active and passive. Active remote sensing is where your instrument provides the photons that are going to hit something and come back at you. So like LiDAR or radar, for example. Passive is just, you've got third-party photons that you use, usually from the sun, that you record on your camera. So we did a lot of instrumentation design, new instrumentation that hadn't been done before, on like internal R&D funds. And to prove it out, you designed it, but you also built it and tested it. And so I got to do a lot of flying around on these Twin Otter aircraft, where we would mount the instrument in the belly of that plane and fly around and take data. So that was kind of fun. And we even got to go to, out of state. This is a data collection campaign that we did in Texas. And then the picture at the bottom there is just for fun. It's the Broncos Stadium from the airplane as we flew over it on our way back to the Broomfield Airport, where we took off and landed. So yeah, so anyway, I just threw that in there. Yeah, so like I said, okay, so I worked on hyperspectral instrumentation, LiDAR instrumentation, and like I said, flying around lots of these instruments in Twin Otter aircraft. I also learned proposal writing, proposal costing, and product development, and all those are really, really good skills to have if you want to do any sort of programmatic work, programmatic management. So that was really invaluable. And so back to the concept of systems engineering, going into my time at Ball, I'd never heard of what that was. I had never heard the term before, but basically it's kind of it's a combination of management and technical work. So it's like basically technical management of an engineering team. You can think of it as the orchestra conductor of an engineering team. And so I was introduced to this kind of work, and I just fell in love with it. I was like, this is great. This works with my I don't know how my brain is wired somehow. And so it was so much fun. It just clicked for me, and I really enjoyed acting in that role for quite some time. So yeah, so and there'll be other examples of, say, like vocabulary that you never heard of that ends up being really cool. So yeah, okay. And so I got to around the 10-year mark at Ball, and you know, Ball is the kind of place that it's easy to stay there for not just years but decades. Like, people literally stay. There was a guy there when I was there. He celebrated his 50th year at Ball. You know, like kind of from another era, right? But it still happens. And I was looking at that. I'm like, yeah, I don't see myself staying in, you know, someplace for that long. And it's been 10 years already. And I kind of started looking around and taking my head out of the sand a little bit and looking around at what the opportunities are. And so I thought, you know, this might be a good time to make a move, try something new. And so this job came up at NEON. And so NEON stands for the National Ecological Observatory Network. It's here in Boulder, headquartered in Boulder. At the time, it was run by the National Science Foundation. And it's a really cool project. It's an NSF infrastructure project, big budget. They're building I guess at this point they've built a ecological observatory for the nation. And how they do that is they divide the country into, I forget how many, 20, say, areas by ecological type, and install the instrumentation to survey it every year. It's a 30-year project. So every year for 30 years, each one of these stations to basically see the change, any changes that develop. And so that included instrumentation towers. It included boots on the ground, people who would go and like literally catch mice and take their blood and look at what's going on in the blood of mice. How many mosquitoes do I catch in this trap this year? Soil samples, things like that. The towers had instrumentation like measuring temperature, measuring barometric pressure, measuring the content of the air, things like that. I was part of the third pillar of this organization, which was the Airborne Observation Platform, or AOP. I was so the position that I looked at and that I got hired on for was Chief Systems Engineer for the AOP. And so AOP included a LiDAR, a hyperspectral imager, and a visible camera that got mounted on the same platform, and again, put on a Twin Otter aircraft to fly around. In operations, it would be for each location once a year. So, you know, I mean, it was a perfect fit for me. I loved it. It was built on what I was doing at Ball, but it also offered more responsibility and opportunity to grow and learn more cool things. And so, you know, it was a no-brainer. I got hired on. I was there for about 2 years. And I loved the work until I didn't. So NEON, I won't go into all the details, but basically NEON had some major managerial problems. And if you're interested, you can Google NEON and congressional hearings. Yeah, literally. So it turns out that for federal money, that's that kind of dollar amount, and if you're like over a year beyond schedule and over, I don't know how many millions of dollars over budget, that automatically triggers congressional hearings. So those happened right after I left. And yeah, so there's just a lot of issues with working there. I'll come back to that in just a second, but I did love the work and I wanted to stay there. So coming out of Ball and NEON, some lessons that I was learning. You know, at this point, I felt like I was connecting with what I call a latent business acumen that was developing. Again, at Ball, you know, I was an engineering manager. I worked on a lot of internal R&D and commercial R&D projects. And so the story I like to tell happened towards the end of my tenure there. And I was asked to head up an engineering team. And I said, sure, no problem. I've done that before. It was a pretty good amount of budget there and a good sized engineering team. So again, this was internal R&D. This means that Ball took its profit money and redirected some portion of it back into R&D. So this is, you know, this is not taken lightly, but basically they said, well, we want you to build, the direction we got was basically build me a widget. It was more like build me a LiDAR. Okay, sure. And so we thought about it and thought about this some more. And then we started coming up with questions, right? So, you know, a lot of why questions and who and what, and, you know, like, so who wants this thing? You know, what do they want it for? Why do they want it from us as opposed to whoever else they could get it from? How much do they want it for? How much do they not want it for? You know, all these kinds of questions that seem pretty basic, but you know, I was asking these and I get nothing coming back. And it was just astounding to me that, you know, so much money could be allotted for a project and then but this hasn't been thought through at all. And so that was astonishing to me. But as I went on my career, it turns out that this build it and they will come mentality is more the rule than the exception. And to me, I was just like, no, there has to be a better way of doing things. There is, and that's what I work on now, but we'll get back to that. So going back to NEON again with the latent business acumen that's kind of developing here. Again, I was a chief systems engineer and loved that role, but in the end, the management roadblocks that I had, the toxic work environment, if you've got somebody who you work for who just won't go to bat for you, you know, it's impossible to be effective. You can't do it. And this was particularly a hard lesson for me because as you know, as physics grad students, you're taught to fix it. Go, you know, if there's a problem, figure out how to fix it, right? Doesn't matter if you're banging your head against the wall for 3 months with no results, go and fix it, go and make it work. And that was what I tried to do, but it was a very painful lesson to finally realize I can't fix this. This is something that's bigger than me. This is something that I don't have the power to fix. I tried, I really tried, but I couldn't. And that was a really hard thing to accept. You don't have many options at that point. You kind of just have to move on. But another big thing that I took away is that, you know, this concept of management, especially I think in the sciences, people use this word management kind of as a dirty word. It's like, oh, you know, I have a, you know, I'm being promoted to management, and it's kind of apologetic, like, you know, this is a bad thing, or, you know, I have to do my managerial duties right now, and, you know, it's a bad thing. It's like, no, this is serious stuff. If you mess this up, this is people's livelihoods. You know, this is whether people can be effective in their positions. This is whether people can want to come to work every single day. And I've seen a lot of damage done by people who don't take this seriously, or maybe they do take it seriously. They're just not meant for that particular position. So, you know, this was kind of end of individual contributor thinking for me. I wanted to be part of the solution here. I wanted to, you know, I wanted to find a better way, pretty much. So, you know, for me, effective management, I feel, is a responsibility beyond just individual contribution or beyond being just an afterthought. So, yeah. So, okay. Well, so NEON, right? I tried for about a year to find another job after, while I was still there, and I couldn't, probably not helped by the fact that I had all these different things that I wanted to, I didn't know what position I wanted, really. So that probably didn't help things too much, but I didn't find a job. And so it was a mental health thing. It was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, it was horrible. And I left. And actually, a lot of people left Neon at that point because of these other issues that Neon was having. It's too bad. I mean, now, like shortly after I left, they fired the whole management team, and now they're being managed by a third party that's not the NSF, but through Battelle. So I think things are better now. But anyway, I wasn't the only one who did this, who couldn't take it. But yeah, so now I just kind of leapt into the great unknown. I had these interests in business, entrepreneurship, startups. So this new focus, but I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have any definition. You know, I had to go find these answers for myself. But as grad students, we're taught to go teach yourself things, right? Like, you go figure this stuff out. And so I did what I could to do that. So my approach, I had a multifaceted approach to try, you know, I had all these questions. I wanted to find answers. So I did various different things to try to do that. With the overarching theme being, you know, I want to learn new things. I have all these questions. And the other thing I should say is, if you don't want to learn new things, then don't do a career pivot. You know, just stay doing what you've been doing. Anyway, so one big part of what I did was through education, formal and otherwise. But I did start. So I had left Neon. I didn't have a job. I thought, okay, this is a good time to do an MBA. So I dove into the executive MBA program at the University of Denver. I loved it. It was so much fun. I learned so much. By the way, this is really mean, but I'll tell you anyway. So like, probably the hardest class that you have is finance. And so the formulas that you have to do in finance are, I mean, they're really trivial compared to what we did. And like, there are a lot of people in like an executive MBA who haven't had math since like probably high school, and they're freaking out about all this stuff. And they're using lookup tables to find answers. And I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm sitting here deriving the formula every single time because I don't remember how to do the lookup tables and all that. And people thought I was nuts. So anyway, yeah, so my favorite class is marketing and innovation. I loved it. And then also a lot of reading, and I'll come to that in the next slide. I did a lot. I'm still doing a lot of strategic pro bono work. So I did an internship with Rockies Venture Club. Rockies Venture Club is a organization based in Denver around entrepreneurial education, as well as they run a network of angel investors. So angels are typically invest in very, very, very early stage companies, probably the first investment you get after like your parents or whatever for a startup company. Dollar amounts around 200,000 or whatever, something like that. But anyway, I did an internship with them. The Colorado OEDIT, which is Office of Economic Development and International Trade. This is the state of Colorado. They run a program for advanced industries where twice a year they will award early stage capital grants, is what it's called, to startup companies in these advanced industries. And so so I review for that program probably about once a year at this point. I've also reviewed for SBIRs. And then CPIA was mentioned, the Colorado Photonics Industry Association. I'm a board member there. But all of those activities are good, are really great for building your network, for getting yourself out there, for other people to see what you can do, and also just demonstrating your interest and getting your questions answered. So that's great stuff. Along the same lines, meetups, entrepreneurial groups, very like-minded people, and mentoring. So I've done a lot of mentoring for groups like TechStars, which is just an accelerator for startup companies. 10-10-10 was a entrepreneurial event, 10-day entrepreneurial event. So those are great. Also shorter investment time, but you learn a lot from those. And then of course, paid positions. So I did go on and I worked for a company called York Space Systems. It's a startup company in Denver that makes satellites, excuse me. And then Bridgecom and then Hedron. So Bridgecom is a company that does laser optical communications, as well as Hedron does optical communications in space. So yeah, let's see. And then, as I said, a lot of reading. Again, you have to have a learning mindset. You have to have a thirst for learning new things, which can involve a little bit of vulnerability sometimes, because it means you don't have all the answers and you're looking for them. And a lot of people have a hard time with that. If you're the type of person who thinks you have all the answers and you don't really want to learn more, then entrepreneurship is not for you. You're not going to do well at it. But these are probably my favorite books. I have a lot more, but these are probably, this is a great start, a starting set of books to take a look at. If you're going to read one business book ever in your entire life, read Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. It consistently shows up as like one of the 100 best business books of all time. It's just amazing because it goes through, what is the subtitle? It's like marketing and selling disruptive products to mainstream customers. It's how do you take something that's new, that maybe just came out of a lab, it's maybe not commercialized yet, and then commercialize it so that you could sell it to mainstream customers, because that's where the market share is. If you're going to have a product that can, sustain itself, you have to be able to do that. And it's really fascinating psychology that selling to very early stage customers versus selling to mainstream customers, it's completely different ball games. And so that's my advice, is that's the top one to read. Blue Ocean Strategy is really cool. It's about basically, you want to be able to compete in a blue ocean where you have something that's so unique that you don't have competitors, and you don't have like red ocean where there are little sharks nipping at you all the time. You want to find that thing about your technology that is so unique that no one else can really provide that. So that's a blue ocean idea. Discipline Entrepreneurship. I love this book. This is this guy he's like at the business school in MIT, and it's like a multi-step process basically for basically running a startup at the very beginning. I love how he talks about it, because there's this mythology in entrepreneurship that, you have to just fly by the seat of your pants. It's all gut instinct. Only some people know how to do this. It's only for the chosen few that they can be successful at it. Those are all wrong. That's not true. And, really, if you ask the right questions, if you do the right research, if you do the right work, and you're disciplined about it, you can be successful. So, which I love, I think is the right message. Mindset. Okay, Carol Dweck. This is a fabulous book. I read this and it completely changed my worldview. But basically, she said that there's two types of thought. One is a fixed mindset, where you are you determine your self-worth basically by what you look like on paper. So what your degrees are, what your titles have been, how much money you make, versus a growth mindset, which is about, well, what questions can I ask? What can I learn? How can I improve on what I already do? And which has nothing to do with what titles you have. And it can be kind of threatening to people who do think that way. But I think it's a fascinating book. Let's see. StrengthsFinder is a great way to just figure out what your strengths are, which is a nice thing. And it articulates those different strengths very well. Startup Owner's Manual and the 4 Steps to the Epiphany. These are Steve Blank books. If you haven't heard that name, this guy is like the father of modern entrepreneurism. He's the first person who said that a startup company is not a small version of a big company. It's fundamentally different. And so, so these are 2 of his basically, these are epic books that basically go through why this is, and then it goes through you know, the different steps to start to do a startup, and what you have to do. Inspired and Talking to Humans. I love these 2 books because it's basically, well, you have to figure, if you're going to try to figure out what your customers want, well, you have to start talking to them. Okay, so how do you do that? What kind of conversations do you have? What kind of information are you trying to get at? And how do you do it? Where to Play is a relatively new book. It's awesome. It's so say you have a new technology, and most like startup founders will say, okay, this is how we're going to apply it, and here's the people we're going to sell it to, right? They kind of come with their own concept of what their market is going to be, who they're going to sell it to, without having given it too much thought, systematic thought. This Where to Play has a framework and a system for considering many different options and then analyzing them for, well, which one is my best bet from a market standpoint, which one's going to give me the best returns from a market standpoint, and also which one's the least risky from an implementation standpoint. So a lot of people don't think that way, and then they get locked into a certain application, and then it may not work out very well. Let's see. Business model generation. If you go into the startup world, you'll see that all over the place. It's basically a nice visual way to depict your hypotheses around a business model. And let's see, Lean Startup is also one of these epic books about basically busting down the preconceived ideas about what a startup is. It's not a small version of a big company. This is how you do it. And then lots of newsletters, lots of reading blog posts, lots of talking to people, asking questions. So, okay. So what about today? Yeah, so I did about, let's see, after I left Ball, it's been about 10 years now. And again, I loved all the positions that I was in, and I went to each one of those positions because I thought they were like my dream job. This is the work that I want to do. And in every case, I loved the work. Like, it was just great. I wanted to do more of it. I wanted to, you know, grow and keep going with it. But the reality was that, you know, in each of these cases, there was some kind of roadblock. There was some kind of concrete ceiling. I don't know what you want to call it, but which manifested itself in different ways in each time. And so it could be challenge, like the management could be very difficult to work with, for example, or make really bad business decisions, or for some reason, like not very good. I wasn't able to grow in the position the way I thought I could, or contribute the way that I wanted to. So kind of a disconnect there, and just it all adds up to not making the impact that I wanted to make, and not just spending too much time on things that have no return on my investment, when I really wanted to be doing work that had, you know, that was rewarding. So, you know, I got to about this time last year, and I was like, yeah, I need to try something different. So that's when I decided I was going to commit to going solo, and basically taking all the skills and all the work that I had done to this point to educate myself and learn, and basically apply that in just for myself in this capacity. So now I have Sapienne Consulting. I focus on commercialization and product strategy for deep tech companies. And I'll talk about what deep tech means. So lots of owls. Somebody commented on the owls before. And there's my business card in case that's of interest to anybody. Yeah, so the next, let's see. So going to the concept of deep tech, I don't know if this is a word you've heard before. I hadn't heard it either. People also use the term hard tech or advanced industries. But these are areas such as aerospace, biotech, biomedical device, clean tech, advanced manufacturing, quantum technologies, robotics, sometimes AI and ML. And so they have common characteristics. So typically they will be hardware focused as opposed to a software play. And because of that, they have longer time scales to maturity than, say, you know, a software company that can make something, you know, in a week or a month or something like that. And consequentially, you typically have larger capital expenditures needed to just make the thing, especially in aerospace. And you have to make it, but then you have to launch it and all that. And then this deep tech is typically rooted in either university-based or corporate-based R&D, and usually there's an intellectual property around it. So yeah, so this is the and I'll say too that, you know, having a physics background, you learn enough to be dangerous in all of these areas, you know, and to ask the right questions and you know, be capable at a certain level in all of these areas. And then if you go on and you even have some industry experience in engineering, even more so. So engineering is great so that you know what are the steps that I need to take to like take it from a lab experiment to something that has the promise of being mass manufactured. So knowing those steps is pretty valuable. Yeah, so the deep tech world is the backdrop of where I work, but let me move on to describe what I do. And to start, you know, just giving you some perspective about this stuff, you know, why is a PhD so dang hard, right? That coursework is unending and it's really difficult. Those problem sets are brutal. You know, your research is full of dead ends. And no one has an answer key, right? There's no, you know, no one has the answers necessarily, especially when your experiment is not working and you tried 10,000 things with no clear hope of what's going to work, right? And so all that uncertainty is excruciating. It's hard, right? It's not for the faint of heart, as you all know. But as I went on in this career, I've realized that, okay, yeah, this is hard, but there's something that's even harder that fewer people know how to do. And so let me go on, explain it to you from a linear algebra standpoint. And I'm pretty sure no one has ever explained product management from a linear algebra standpoint before. So bear with me and hopefully it makes sense because, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to start with product because I'm a product person. I am product focused and it's fundamental to a company, right? So let me set the stage here for you. You work in a company, you build a product. That product has features, and you're the one who has to decide which features do you include, which features do you not include, and why. But you want to make your customer happy, right? You sell your product to your customer, and customers hopefully give you money in exchange. That's pretty fundamental, right? And then this money is important because it's used to buy more materials, to make more products, to pay your salary, and to run the company. So you can think of that as this state vector or matrix, okay? The product you build, all of those features are encapsulated in these characteristics here, okay? So that's the cost, that's the size, that's the features that you include, that's, you know, materials that go into it. And so what's also included in that, right, is any scientific discovery that's behind this technology, any intellectual property or a patent, say, that's behind the technology, any engineering development that's needed to take it, again, from a lab, something that, you know, hopefully works in the lab, to something that could work, you know, on you in somebody's house or something. And then all your technical expertise. So all of that goes into this product that you build, this state vector, if you will, or matrix. And all that's really hard, right? This is hard stuff, right? This is these revolutionary disruptive products don't come around every day. Okay, so now let's go to the other side of the equation. Let's go to the customer side and the customer experience. So I'm going to paint two scenarios for you, okay? Scenario A, your customer tries your product. Now, it may not be terribly clear how it helps them, and so they may not be terribly motivated to use it. It's kind of difficult to operate. It doesn't integrate well with their existing business modes of operation. There are extra features that kind of that make it more complicated and confusing. It's too expensive for their budget, and it's unreliable and doesn't work often enough. So that happens. Scenario B, your customer tries your product. It's a clear solution to a well-defined and urgent problem that they have. It's relatively easy to operate. It slots in easily with their existing business practices and process. There's a simplicity to it where it just addresses that urgent problem that's been driving you nuts for days, weeks, years. And because of that simplicity, you can keep the cost down and the complexity and risk of production down. It's worth the money and it works reliably. So this is what the customer experiences, is this matrix, this vector, okay? All of those characteristics get rolled up into those variables in there, okay? So how it makes their life easier, how well you can operate it, how easy it is to procure, for example. But what the customer does not experience, they don't experience anything about scientific discovery. They don't experience anything about intellectual property. They don't experience anything about any of the engineering development that went into it. They don't care. They want to know if it helps them, if it solves a problem for them. And so that's why this is even harder, because the brutal reality is they just don't care, right? If it doesn't work for them, if it doesn't help them in some way, it doesn't matter how brilliant you may think your technology is, or how awesome it is, or how whatever superlative you want to use, you're not going to make any money off of it. Your company might go bankrupt. And so that's why this is even harder than the technical stuff. Now, what connects the two? That's the customer transfer matrix, okay? So you guys know linear algebra, you know how that works. I had to actually pull out my linear algebra book and remember how you actually write this stuff out. Hopefully I did it right. But basically the idea here is, you know, the diagonal terms are the ones that are gonna resonate maximally with the product that you build, okay? Now, the off-diagonal terms are the ones, they do not resonate. They distract from whatever it is that you built and confuse, okay? When you're designing a product, when you're building a product, you want to minimize your off-diagonal terms, and you want to make sure that the diagonal terms amplify your product. That's your mission in life. Now, leaving the mathematical analogs, how do you do that? Oh yeah, and by the way, the theory and practice of customer transfer matrices is a field called product management. That's another vocab word. And this is a field that I didn't even know existed, but this was the answer to one of my big questions, product management. But yeah, so, and it's like 100 years old. This is not new stuff. It's just, it seems revolutionary to many people. But anyway, how do you do this? You've got your scenario A and B that I described. Many people would say, well, isn't it just luck whether you end up with scenario A or scenario B? The answer is no, absolutely not. And that's so the answer here is simple and yet so complex. It's something called primary market research, which is just a fancy way of saying go out and talk to your customers. The research you do at your desk or in the library is good. It's a good start, but it's not enough. You have to, so Steve Blank, who I mentioned before, he's famous for this phrase of get outside the building. Go outside the building and start talking to people. Talk to potential customers, talk to potential users, talk to people in the ecosystem that you're interested in penetrating. That's what you have to do. And a lot of people, it's difficult for a lot of people. I mean, the technical is enough, right? It's hard enough, but to have to do this on top of it can be challenging. That's why I try to help people do this. But, another perspective on this is when you're in school, right? You are, somebody gives you the problems you have to solve for your homework set, right? And you never ask, are these the right problems to solve? You just have to, the blood, sweat, and tears comes from just solving them, right? In grad school, you pick a problem to investigate because it's interesting, right? That's a great reason. But, in business, it's immaterial if you think a problem is interesting or if somebody else tells you to do it. It's what a customer finds necessary or interesting that drives everything, okay? So you have to validate all your hypotheses. So I do customer transfer matrices, okay? So that comes in different flavors. One is market discovery research. So as I mentioned before, if you've got a particular technology, there are likely many different market opportunities that you could pursue with it. Some will have better growth potential. Some will have fewer implementation challenges. So how do you figure out which one's the best? There are tools that are out there that can help you do this. Customer discovery research. So once you're inside of a particular market opportunity, you have to spend some time to characterize your potential customer, to understand all their user and buying behavior, how they would use this particular product, but most fundamentally is understanding whether that problem you're solving for them. Is it a real problem? How urgent of a problem is it? Those things are really, really important to understand. And how does that problem manifest in how they their day-to-day use of a particular product? Value proposition and product roadmap. So so again, if you do enough research, you should have a hypothesis for what value you bring to that customer, but you have to validate that by going and talking to people again to confirm your hypotheses. So once you have a decent handle on that, then you can plan for future iterations of a product down the line, so you can grow your company and have new markets to explore. But the point is that doing this work to not just have a hypothesis, but validate it is so important for buying down unnecessary business risk. Yeah, so I think that's about it. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I'm happy to answer any questions. And here's your little glossary of terms that I covered. So thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. That was extremely interesting. We're now going to have some questions from the audience. If you're on Zoom, then please type your question in the chat and we'll read it out. If you're in person, then we'll give you the microphone so that everyone online can also hear you. Does anyone want to get us started?
Hi, Tanya.
Hi.
Great talk. Thank you for giving it.
You're welcome.
Question I had would be if you could kind of so it seems like you kind of discovered your interest in like the business side and the management side at the end of your ball time, and you kind of were able to get your feet wet and transition into that side through working at Ball. So I was just curious, like if you could go back and talk to yourself, like before you started working there, or you're fresh grad student, like is there a, like if you knew ahead of time that this was kind of what you're interested in, is there a way to like jump straight there? Or do you feel like that time of working at a place like Ball or a company where you get to like slowly figure it out in a setting like that, where you transition and you slowly acquire responsibility and slowly acquire that, is that more advantageous, would you think?
Yeah, so you can acquire a lot of this kind of skills and perspective if you were to stay at Ball, but just go a different route within Ball, for example. And people do that, you know, like they may pivot into business development, for example. They may pivot into, I don't know, you know, running a division or something like that. You know, a lot of people, and there are definitely advantages to that. I mean, Ball's a great company. It's also nice to have it's a very stable company for the most part. It's great to have that paycheck every single month. You know, it's great to rely on that. The benefits are awesome. You know, a lot of people just, you know, that's it for them. That's what they want. And the technology that they work on is great. You know, it's really fascinating, interesting stuff. So absolutely, you can go that direction. I mean, the typical complaint, if you will, for staying someplace like that is, you know, it's relatively hierarchical, and there's a lot of organizational structure. I found that, you know, even if you were doing the work of like a principal engineer, where I was a senior engineer, you couldn't get promoted because you haven't been in the senior engineer role long enough. And I was like, but I'm already doing that work. So what's, you know, so silly things like that you get at a large company. It also doesn't move very fast. It can be pretty bogged down in you know, process. Yeah, innovation for a company like, it's interesting. Ball, in my opinion, does not do innovation very well. In fact, here's something that's crazy. So Ball Aerospace is a subsidiary of Ball Corporation. Ball Corporation is like the largest aluminum can manufacturer in the world, in case you didn't know this. And I actually applied for a job at Ball Corp. They have an innovation department, and they have better defined innovation practices there than they do in Ball Aerospace. And I almost got a job there. So anyway, yeah, so you know, there are pros and cons to, there's definitely a lot of cons to doing what I've been doing. You know, the other thing too is, you know, I have to say, you know, leaving a job when you don't have another one lined up. A lot of people, you know, think, okay, well, you know, her husband or whatever will, you know, fill in the holes. My husband's a teacher, you know, so this was I've always made like twice as much as he ever will make. So, you know, this is not a decision that was taken lightly. You know, there are definitely trade-offs that you have to make. Just depends on, but the other thing I'll say, and I'll finish with this, is I always say, you know, there are different kinds of risk. So there's definitely financial risk, but there's other kinds of risk. You can be fired from any job, you know, or you can like be so miserable at any job that you want to pull your hair out every single night. You know, there's mental health risk. There's, you know, if you're so miserable that your family is like, what is wrong with you every single night when you go home, you know, that has an impact too. So you have to weigh everything.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your talk. It was wonderful. I guess I would have maybe somewhat related questions, two, if I could ask them. One would be whether or not you think